Today we explore the story of the creation of the world by Atum. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. There is no earth, no sky, no sun, no stars, no humans, no gods, only darkness, only silence, and an endless ocean stretching into infinity. This was the beginning, according to the ancient Egyptians. They believed the universe was once nothing but a boundless sea, a dark and swirling void known as none. No land rose above the waters. No sound broke the silence. There was no time, no light, no direction. But then, from that endless chaos, something extraordinary happened. A single force stirred within the waters. A spark of self-awareness. A being that would bring order from chaos, light from darkness, and life from emptiness. His name was Atum. He was not born from parents. He created himself. He was the first, the only, and the source from which everything else would come. Atum's story is not just a tale of creation. It is a story of loneliness, willpower, and transformation. It is about how one God shaped the very fabric of existence with nothing but his own essence. And today, we will follow this journey, from the first breath of creation to the birth of gods, humans, and the world itself. But before the world could take shape, we must return to the beginning, to the dark, endless waters of none. The Egyptians imagined none not as nothingness, but as a vast potential. Within its depth lay everything that could ever be, waiting to be formed. Yet for countless ages, nothing stirred. Silence reigned. The waters rolled without end. Then, something remarkable occurred. From this boundless ocean, Atum came into being. How he appeared is told in many ways. Some say he rose as a shining hill, a mound of earth that broke through the waters. Others say he simply willed himself into existence, emerging from the chaos as pure consciousness. He was both male and female, complete within himself, the totality of creation waiting to unfold. The Egyptians called this first mound the Benben, the sacred primeval hill. It was the first land, the first stability in a universe of shifting water. And upon this hill stood Atum, alone but filled with purpose. Atum's name means the complete one or the all. He was everything at once. Yet this completeness was also a burden. Imagine standing on the first solid ground with nothing else around you. No voices, no companions, no sky above, no earth below. Only yourself in infinite silence. Atum was powerful, but he was also utterly alone. And so, from this loneliness, he felt the need to create. He wanted company. He wanted movement, sound, and life. The universe could not remain an empty stage. It needed actors, voices, and stories. But Atum had no tools, no materials, no clay, no fire. Everything that would exist had to come from himself. So, he reached inward. He became both the artist and the raw material. From his very essence, Atum created the first divine pair, Shu, the god of air, and Tefnut, the goddess of moisture. How exactly did he bring them forth? The myths give us several versions, some more mysterious than others. In one telling, Atum produced them by an act of will. In another, he brought them into existence through his breath. Yet the most vivid version describes Atum creating Shu and Tefnut by using his own body, through his seed, through a sneeze, or through his spit. To modern ears, it may sound strange or even humorous, but to the Egyptians, it was a sacred truth. Life emerged from Atum's own essence. Thus Shu and Tefnut were born. Shu became the breath of life, the air that would one day fill the lungs of living creatures. Tefnut became the moisture, the dew, the gentle rain, and the fluids that would nourish all forms of life. Together, they represented the balance of dryness and wetness, the forces needed to create a world where life could thrive. Atum now was no longer alone. He had companions, his children, his first creations. But as any parent knows, creating life comes with responsibility. Shu and Tefnut wandered into the vastness, and in that infinite darkness, they became lost. Atum felt sorrow. He had created life, but now feared losing it. Imagine the silence returning, the loneliness threatening once again. And so, he acted. From his body, he tore out his own eye, a divine and magical eye, and sent it to search for his children. The eye of Atum drifted through the chaos, glowing like a beacon. It found Shu and Tefnut and brought them safely back to their father. Atum wept with joy upon their return, and from his tears, humans were born. His sorrow gave rise to humanity. In Egyptian thought, this was not a tragedy, but a beautiful truth. Human beings were born from the tears of a god, from love and longing. And now, creation was no longer still. It was alive. Shu and Tefnut were reunited with Atum, and with them, the first family of gods had begun. But this was only the beginning. From this family would rise the very structure of the world, the earth, the sky, and all that lies between. With Shu and Tefnut safely returned, the story of creation could move forward. Together, they would give rise to the next generation, the next great forces that shaped the universe. From their union came two children, Gebbi, the god of the earth, and Nut, the goddess of the sky. This moment was critical. For the first time, the foundations of the physical world began to appear. Geb was the solid ground beneath all things. He was the mountains, the valleys, the soil, and the stone. Nut was the endless canopy above, stretching like a dome, jeweled with the promise of stars. Together, they formed the stage upon which life would one day unfold. But their story was not simple. Geb and Nut were deeply connected. They loved each other so much that they clung tightly together, earth and sky locked in a firm embrace. Geb held Nut close, and Nut lay upon him, and there was no space between them. The universe was still small, compressed, without room for life to move or breathe. Atum, watching this, knew that creation could not continue this way. There needed to be distance, separation, order. Without space, the world could not expand. Without boundaries, light and time could not exist. So Atum commanded Shu, the god of air, to act. Shu, strong and unyielding, stepped between his children. With all his power, he pushed Nut upward, lifting her away from Geb. Slowly, painfully, the embrace was broken. Geb stretched out below, forming the earth. Nut arched above, her body bending like a great ceiling, her skin shining with stars. And thus, the world as we know it began to take shape. The earth below, the sky above, the air between them. Order out of chaos. But though Geb and Nut were separated, their bond remained strong. Their longing for each other was eternal. Nut wept for her beloved, and her tears fell as rain upon Geb's body. Geb, in turn, stretched upward with his mountains and hills, trying to reach her, yearning for her touch. And so, the Egyptians explained the cycles of weather. Rain, rivers, the endless connection between earth and sky. From Geb and Nut came the next generation of gods, who would play vital roles in shaping the destiny of the world. They were Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys. Each of them embodied forces of life, death, love, and conflict. But before their dramas unfolded, the basic structure of the cosmos was already in place. The Egyptians saw this order: earth, sky, air, water, life, and death, as the very foundation of Ma'at, the principle of harmony and balance. Ma'at was not just a concept, but a guiding truth. Without balance, the world would fall back into chaos, into none. And so every part of creation was connected, each role vital to the survival of the whole. Now, imagine the universe at this stage, Nut arched high above, her body glowing with stars. Geb stretched below, green and fertile, his laughter rumbling as the sound of earthquakes. Shu stood tall, arms outstretched, forever holding the sky away from the earth. And Atum, the first, looked upon his creation and saw that it was alive, dynamic, and filled with potential. Yet, even in this newly formed world, challenges arose. The gods were not perfect. They quarreled. They loved. They made mistakes. Just as humans would one day struggle with jealousy, ambition, and desire, so too did the gods. And in their struggles, the Egyptians found explanations for the mysteries of life and death. For now, though, the focus was on the grand design. Atum had begun the process, but the cosmos was still young. The balance was fragile. Shu strained under the weight of the sky. Nut longed to return to Geb. Geb trembled with both joy and sorrow. And above all, Atum watched, guiding, ensuring that order held against the pull of chaos. The people of ancient Egypt believed this was not a story of the distant past, but a truth that continued every day. Every sunrise was Nut giving birth to the sun. Every nightfall was her swallowing it again, carrying it across her body until morning. Every flood of the Nile was Geb receiving Nut's tears, and every breath of air was Shu, still holding the balance. In this way, the myth was not just about how the world began, but how it continued, how it survived. Creation was not a single event. It was an eternal act, renewed with each dawn, with each season, with each heartbeat. And so, the universe had taken its first true shape. The primeval waters were pushed back. The mound had risen. The sky was lifted. The earth was steady. Air filled the space between. Life was possible. And Atum, though no longer alone, had set in motion forces that would reach far beyond his first act of creation. But creation was not yet complete. The gods born from Nut and Geb would play their own parts. Love, betrayal, death, and resurrection would soon shape the destiny of gods and humans alike. And it all began with the children of Geb and Nut, who would define the eternal cycle of life and death. And so, from Geb the earth and Nut the sky came 4 children who would shape the destiny of gods and mortals alike. They were Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys. Each represented not just divine beings, but powerful forces that explain the mysteries of existence. To the Egyptians, their lives and struggles revealed why the world was the way it was. Osiris was the eldest, noble, and wise. He was associated with fertility, vegetation, and the renewal of life. Wherever the Nile flooded and crops grew, the people saw the hand of Osiris. He was the promise of rebirth and abundance. Beside him was his sister and wife, Isis. She embodied magic, protection, and devotion. Isis was the Great Mother, the healer, the one who preserved life even in the darkest times. Her knowledge of spells and her unwavering love made her one of the most beloved deities in all of Egypt. Then came Set, the god of chaos, storms, and violence. Unlike his siblings, he embodied destruction. His power was raw and unpredictable, like the desert winds that carried sandstorms across the land. Set was necessary, for chaos always exists, but he was also dangerous, always threatening balance. Finally, there was Nephthys, the goddess of night, lamentation, and protection. She lived in the shadows but was not evil. She guided souls in death, stood beside Isis in rituals, and ensured that endings could lead to new beginnings. Together, these four children carried within them the story of life, love, conflict, and death. At first, Osiris and Isis reigned together in harmony. Osiris was said to have ruled the earth as the first king, bringing laws, order, and agriculture. He taught humans how to cultivate crops, how to worship the gods, and how to live in harmony with Ma'at, the principle of balance. Under his rule, the land was fertile, the people prospered, and peace flourished. But Set, his brother, grew jealous. He looked at Osiris with envy, for Osiris had power, respect, and love, while Set ruled over the barren desert. Chaos always opposes order, and in Set's heart burned the desire to overthrow his brother. The myth tells us that Set devised a cunning plan. He built a beautiful chest, crafted to fit only one body perfectly, that of Osiris. At a great feast, he presented the chest to the guests and declared, "Whoever lies within it shall keep it as a gift." One by one, the gods tried, but none fit. Finally, Osiris entered the chest, and it closed around him like a perfect embrace. At that moment, Set slammed the lid shut, sealed it with molten lead, and cast it into the Nile. Osiris was gone. The chest drifted down the river, carried into the sea, and eventually lodged within the trunk of a great tree. The tree grew around it, hiding the chest inside its wood. In time, the tree was cut down and used as a pillar in a foreign palace, its secret hidden deep inside. When Isis learned of this, her grief was overwhelming. But she did not surrender. She searched tirelessly, guided by love and magic. She disguised herself, crossed rivers, and wandered foreign lands until she found the pillar that held her husband. With devotion and cunning, she brought him back, hidden within the chest. Yet Set was not finished. Furious that Isis had undone his work, he stole Osiris's body and tore it into pieces, scattering them across Egypt. To Set, it was the ultimate act of chaos, breaking apart order, leaving nothing whole. But Isis would not give up. With Nephthys by her side, she gathered the pieces of Osiris, one by one. Across fields and deserts, she searched. Each fragment of her husband she found, she mourned, and she reassembled him. With her magic, with her love, she restored him as best she could. Osiris could not return to the world of the living in full. He had crossed too far into death. But through Isis's magic, he was revived just enough to father a child. Horus, the falcon god, destined to challenge Set and restore balance. Osiris then became ruler of the underworld, the judge of the dead. In him, death was not an end, but a gateway to eternity. Every soul that passed beyond life came before Osiris, who weighed their heart against the feather of Ma'at. If the heart was pure, the soul was granted eternal life. If it was heavy with sin, it was devoured. In this way, the myth of Osiris explained the cycles of nature and the mystery of death. Just as the crops died in the heat of summer and rose again with the floods of the Nile, so too did life fall and return. Death was not a final destruction, but a passage into another realm, ruled by Osiris, sustained by Isis, and guided by Nephthys. The struggle between Osiris and Set, between Horus and Chaos, was more than a family conflict. It was the eternal struggle between order and disorder, life and death, fertility, and sterility. It explained why storms come, why deserts spread, why rivers flood, and why humans must live according to balance. And through it all, Atum's creation continued to unfold. The universe was alive, filled with drama, passion, and lessons for humankind. For in the struggles of the gods, the Egyptians saw their own struggles of love, jealousy, loyalty, and the quest for justice. But the story does not end here. For the birth of Horus set the stage for one of the most important conflicts in Egyptian myth, the great battle between Horus and Set, a battle that would decide the destiny of the gods and the rightful order of the cosmos. And so, from the union of Isis and the restored Osiris, a new hope was born, the falcon-headed god Horus. Horus came into the world under the shadow of danger. His father had been murdered, his mother was pursued by Set, and chaos threatened to consume everything. Isis, knowing the weight of her child's destiny, fled into hiding. She raised Horus in secret, protecting him with spells and charms, keeping him hidden from Set's eyes. As Horus grew, he was taught not only by his mother, but by the gods themselves. He learned wisdom, strength, and the sacred ways of kingship. Horus was destined to challenge Set and restore harmony, to bring justice for his father, and to secure the order that Atum had set in motion. When the time came, Horus confronted Set. What followed was no single battle, but a long and bitter struggle that lasted for years. The two gods clashed in contests of strength, cunning, and endurance. Sometimes Horus gained the upper hand, other times Set prevailed. Their conflict echoed across the cosmos, shaking both earth and sky. In one tale, Horus and Set transformed into mighty animals, bulls, hippopotamuses, falcons, and fought in the waters of the Nile. In another, they competed in feats of strength before the assembly of the gods. Time and again, neither could claim final victory. The gods themselves grew weary of the conflict. To end it, they formed a divine tribunal, with the great sun god, Ra, presiding. The council debated for years, weighing the claims of Horus and Set. Should Set, the elder, keep his throne, though he was guilty of treachery? Or should Horus, the rightful heir, be crowned king of the living? The arguments went on endlessly, for Set was cunning and persuasive, while Horus had the support of Isis and the justice of his father's murder behind him. At times the gods leaned towards Set, swayed by his strength. At other times, they favored Horus, inspired by his rightful claim. One story tells that Isis, desperate to tip the scales, transformed herself into a beautiful maiden. She lured Set close, pretending to be lost and in need of help. When Set asked who wronged her, she told him of a cruel brother who had stolen her husband's inheritance. Outraged, Set swore that such injustice should never stand. In that moment, he condemned himself, admitting his guilt without realizing the trap. Even so, the struggle dragged on. Horus lost an eye in the battles, torn out by Set. But the god Thoth, master of wisdom and writing, healed him, restoring the eye with magic. This eye of Horus became a symbol of protection, wholeness, and healing for all Egyptians. To lose it was pain and darkness, but to regain it was victory and renewal. In the end, after endless trials, Horus triumphed. The gods declared him the rightful ruler, the living king upon the throne of Egypt. Set was not destroyed, for chaos could never be erased entirely. Instead, he was cast into the desert, given dominion over barren lands, storms, and foreign places. There, his presence remained, a constant reminder that disorder always lurks at the edge of creation. With Horus crowned, order was restored. Osiris ruled the underworld. Horus ruled the earth, and the cycle of life, death, and rebirth was complete. Every pharaoh of Egypt thereafter was seen as the living Horus, the heir to this divine legacy. To be king was not just to govern people, but to uphold Ma'at, the eternal balance established since the first moments of creation. The Egyptians believed that through this cosmic battle, the world itself was stabilized. Day followed night. The Nile flooded and receded. Crops grew and were harvested. Life was renewed generation after generation. All of it was the result of Horus's victory, the triumph of order over chaos. Yet the story carried a warning too. Set was not destroyed, only pushed back. Chaos could never vanish, for it was part of existence itself. Storms would still rage, deserts would still spread, and men would still quarrel. But as long as kings ruled in the name of Horus, as long as people honored Ma'at, order would endure. And so the myth of Horus and Set was not just about gods. It was a story about kingship, justice, and the eternal responsibility of humans to uphold balance. Pharaohs were Horus on earth, Osiris in death, guardians of the divine cycle. When they ruled justly, the Nile flooded, the land prospered, and Egypt thrived. When they failed, chaos threatened to return, as Set still waited at the edges of the desert. This was the heart of Egyptian belief, that creation was fragile, always at risk, always in need of protection. The gods had shaped the world, but it was up to both rulers and people to maintain it. Thus, from Atum's first act of self-creation to the crowning of Horus, the universe had been given form, order, and purpose. The great cycle of life and death, of chaos and harmony, was set in motion. But even this was not the final word. For creation was not a single act of the past. It was eternal. Each sunrise, each flood, each new pharaoh was a renewal of Atum's first moment on the primal mound. And it is here that we return to the heart of the story, to Atum, the complete one, who had begun it all. And so we return to where it all began, to Atum, the first god, the complete one, who rose from the waters of none and brought forth the world. Everything that followed, shoe-lifting Nut from Geb, the birth of Osiris and Isis, the rivalry of Set, the crowning of Horus, all of it was possible because of Atum's first act of creation. From loneliness, he had created company. From silence, he had created voices. From emptiness, he had built a universe alive with order and meaning. But for the Egyptians, this was not just a story of the distant past. They believed creation was eternal, ongoing, renewed each day. Atum's act was the first spark, but it was a spark that still burned. Every morning, when the sun rose in the east, the Egyptians saw it as a new act of creation. The sky goddess Nut gave birth to the sun, and the world began again. Every evening, when the sun set, Nut swallowed it, carrying it across her body until dawn. Each cycle of day and night was the rhythm of creation, unbroken and eternal. In the same way, the annual flood of the Nile was not only a natural event. It was Geb receiving Nut's tears, bringing water and life to the earth. Crops sprouted, fields turned green, and the people of Egypt thrived. This was the promise of Osiris, reborn in every stalk of grain, in every harvest. Even death itself was not the end. When a person died, they did not vanish into nothingness. They entered the realm of Osiris, where their heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at. If they had lived in balance, they joined the eternal cycle of life beyond death. If not, their soul was lost to chaos. In this way, death mirrored creation. From order came renewal. From endings came beginnings. Atum himself was not only the god of beginnings, but also of endings. The Egyptians believed that just as he had risen from none to create the world, one day he would return all things back into himself. The cycle would complete, and then begin again. In Atum, everything had its source and its return. He was the first and the last, the eternal center of creation. This belief gave the Egyptians a sense of stability. Life was fragile, yes. Chaos always threatened. But there was also comfort in knowing that order was not random. It had a source, a structure, a cycle. As long as the gods were honored, as long as Ma'at was upheld, the world would endure. And so the story of Atum was not just about how the world began. It was about why the world continued. It was about the sun, the Nile, the harvest, the rule of kings, the breath of life, and even the journey of the soul after death. It was a story woven into every part of existence, from the mightiest pharaoh to the humblest farmer. Imagine then, the daily life of an Egyptian. At sunrise, they would see Horus in the sky, renewed each day, a living reminder of victory over chaos. In the fields, they would see Osiris in the green crops, a sign that life returns after death. In the rituals, they would hear Isis's magic, a promise that love and devotion conquer even despair. And at night, under the starry body of Nut, they would know that they were held within a divine story, unbroken since the first moment Atum rose from the waters. To the Egyptians, the myth was not distant, not abstract. It was alive, happening around them, within them, through them. Every action, every word, every offering to the gods was part of keeping creation alive, of helping Atum's first act continue forever. And this is why these stories endured for thousands of years. They were not just myths. They were guides. They taught people how to live in harmony, how to respect balance, how to see themselves as part of something much greater. Atum's creation was not just about gods. It was about humanity's place in the cosmos. Born from his tears, humans were children of the divine, participants in the eternal cycle of life and death. The story told them, you matter. Your choices matter. Your life is part of creation itself. And so the tale of Atum is both grand and deeply personal. It speaks of cosmic order and the destiny of gods, but also of love, grief, renewal, and the responsibility each person carries. It is a reminder that from chaos can come order, from loneliness can come life, and from endings can come beginnings. This is the story of Atum, the first god, the creator, the complete one. From the waters of Nun to the stars in the sky, his legacy is the world itself. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the ancient Egyptian story of Atum and the creation of the world. If you enjoyed this video and want to explore more myths, legends, and forgotten stories of the past, make sure to like, subscribe, and share. It helps us bring more stories like this to life. And tell me in the comments, which part of Atum's creation story fascinated you most? Was it his loneliness at the beginning, the struggle of Osiris and Set, or the eternal cycle of renewal? Until next time, may the balance of Ma'at guide your path.